Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Winning Together webinar, where the topic is lighting architecture. Let me call in Ms. Sudeshna Mukhopadhyay to introduce today's eminent speaker.
Lighting Academy for joining this morning's special webcast. My name is Sudeshna Mukhopadhyay and I am the leader of the Center of Competence in Lighting Applications in India, and I also lead the Philips Lighting Academy. And therefore, I really have the special privilege to do the honors of welcoming none other than architect Sanjay Mohe to today's webcast. I'm really privileged to do so, and I think these are the special privileges you have in your own position as I have now. Before I do that, let me also introduce the Philips Lighting Academy to you. Many of you may be interacting with us. This is quite a new initiative of Philips with the sole purpose of structuring lighting education and provide platforms of cross-learning. So Lighting Academy is not exactly a training academy for Philips products or solutions, but we are more focused on lighting education, especially in the area of design and application. And when I talk about providing platforms of cross-learning, we have, through various programs like this and beyond, eminent architects, visual designers, engineers, green specialists, educators, who occasionally come to us, and we have all these cross-learning platforms. We have collaborations also with various colleges of architecture and engineering colleges and some institutions, practicing institutions like IIID or IGBC or TERI for that matter, where we conduct regular courses or short-term courses, and again focused mostly on lighting design and application. We realize that lighting design per se and lighting design application is still not part of any educational courses or structured education courses, and it is our endeavor to co-partner with many of the architectural colleges or even independent architects to get this lighting design education established in India. Within the Philips Lighting Academy offerings, we have quite a few things. We have our own website, and I'm sure many of you log in there as well. In our website, we have a lot of online courses, online resource library. You can also hear videos from eminent lighting designers, global lighting designers who practice lighting design in various parts of the world, and their perspectives on lighting and lighting design. We also use platforms like this today, the WebEx, to conduct personal teaching. That means small group or distance teaching. And of course, we also do face-to-face programs as well. That means on-site programs as well. Now, let me come to the main man in today's session. To the world of architecture and lighting, architect Sanjay Mohe needs no introduction. He remains to be one of the most respected architects in India, with a sustainable and simplicity-oriented designs rooted in India's traditional culture. For someone who lets his work do the talking always, his sustainable and simplicity-oriented designs have a deep, deep connect to Indian traditional culture. It would be a very, very illuminating an hour and a half talking to architect Sanjay Mohe about architecture and lighting. The sage-like architect gives architecture a spiritual spin, as calming as his own self himself. Architect Sanjay Mohe graduated from the Sir J.J. School of Architecture, Bombay in 1976, securing the Claude Barclay Gold Medal. He's also the founder of the 11-year Bangalore-based Mindspace. Architect Mohe has held many positions of repute prior to that. He also worked overseas in Saudi Arabia. He worked with Charles Correa and Architecture Design Associates, worked with Chandavarkar and Thakur before he started his own firm. He has designed many, many projects. It would be, a very long introduction, and I don't want to eat into his time. He's done research laboratories, knowledge park, campus design, factories, beach resort, library, corporate office, hospices. But one special project needs to be mentioned is Karunashray, the home for the terminally ill in Bangalore. I mean, this is really, if you, like, all of you can understand the importance and depth of, designing a project like this. Architect Mohe has also won several awards, and he has, really a very, very long list. Just to mention a few, he has been honored with the A&D and Spectrum Foundation Architecture Award, the Golden Architect Award in India. He has many, many times won the J.K. Cements Architects of the Year Award, starting as early as 1991 and in very recent times in 2013 as well. He's also won the A&D Spectrum Foundation Architecture Award in many years, J.K. Cement State Architect of the Year Award, the Award of the Journal of the Indian Institute of Architects, and the Gold Medal from Arcasia 1998. So over to you, Vivek and Architect Mohe, to take it on from Bangalore now. And I wish all of you an extremely enjoying, enlightening, and a great, great session ahead. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and it is really an honor for us to have you in our platform today. Thank you very much, Architect Mohe.
Thank you, Sudeshna, for such a long and elaborate introduction. So let me start the topic of light in architecture. Now, I'm going to talk, I'm sitting in Philip's office, but I'm going to talk about natural lighting, not about architectural lighting, not about artificial lighting. Okay. These are some of the images of Banaras, and Banaras is known as a city of lights. And if you see this celebration of light, you see this contrast between water and lamp, water and fire, and it creates that amazing kind of a contrast between these two, and which creates that very powerful kind of a statement. And this whole celebration of light, which happens in Banaras, it's when you see these images, it's quite amazing because you have these large plains of water. There is this fire happening, there is a sound, there is smoke, there is smell. And can you imagine the kind of ambience in which this kind of whole celebration happens? And this is something which I have not experienced it personally, but I can imagine the kind of ambience that this whole place would generate. So this whole kind of ambience which happens in this setting, we traditionally we celebrate light. All our festivals are designed to celebrate light. We have different examples of that, light and color. And then we have architecture to celebrate light as well. This is like a Sheesh Mahal. And the amazing part of it is when you have a light and we start moving that light, that entire space keeps changing. The quality of space, the power that this space generates. Then we have music to celebrate different times of the day, as the light changes, the quality of music changes, the ragas changes. So you have ragas for morning, you have ragas for afternoon, you have ragas for evening. And when this light quality changes from morning during the early morning or during evening, that's always the most colorful moment. And it's not only just colorful moment, it sort of connects with your emotions. And especially in the evening, it is proved that when the light sort of changes, that light quality changes, it sort of affects a lot of people who are sort of, emotionally stressed. And you would experience it when you sort of go for an afternoon movie. And when you come out of that movie theater, you suddenly feel disoriented about it. So there is that very, very strong connect between the light quality and emotions, and which happens during morning and evening. And if you ask me what is probably the most beautiful light that you experienced in your life, you would always go back to nature. And I would look at this light which is filtered through the clouds, or light filtering through um, the leaves, um, especially especially when you travel in the bus and when your eye level is little higher. I'm saying not in car but in bus. When and you see these paddy fields, and the way the color of that paddy field changes, against the light and through the light, that change of color itself is quite powerful to look at. The lightning, the fog. I mean, this is something again quite amazing, and especially most of these Delhiites would experience it. And it's like watching a movie. You suddenly someplace it all gets cleared up, and you get a very clear picture of the entire scenario beyond, and then it disappears next moment. So it's a great fun to just look at that quality of light. Right? And then you have these evening lights, the moonlight with some absolutely sharp shadows. So this whole idea of using that moonlight, and probably that's the reason most of our festivals are also during this either full moon night or during new moon night. So there is always that idea of celebration, idea of connecting that light quality with our normal living. And I wonder always, why do we get fascinated with this natural light? And probably one of the reasons is it is never constant. It is always changing. And this is like if you see a fire or if you see water, you will never be able to get two similar pictures of that, because every moment, every second, it's not the same. It is something which is changing all the time, and which you can't hold on to. And that's the reason when you see this setting sun almost like every day, but you want to stop one more day and want to have a look at it, because you really enjoy seeing that. You can't possess it, you can't hold on to it. Now, how do you really connect all these things with architectural space? Is it really possible to have these qualities of light that we just experience, and can you really connect it with architectural space and really use it to architectural advantage? Now, on the stage, people have used it. Using artificial light, you create different ambiances and you create different moods, and you try to connect it with the emotions. And throughout your life, all of us architects, struggle so hard to create that connect with light and emotions. And then you try to build a story out of it. You sort of create those different points of references having different spatial qualities, and you sort of link them across the space, and as the whole sequence changes, the entire story changes. So you sort of spend all your life trying to understand what that space sequence should be, what emotional quality of space should be. Now this is a hospice project which we just talked about. And this is in Bangalore, and what we were trying to do is orient the entire building towards the east, towards the rising sun, and trying to blank off the western side, obviously to stop the radiation from the western sun from coming in. But mainly the occupants here are terminally ill patients, and they spend last few days of their life in this building. So we wanted them to look at the rising sun and not the setting sun. And the next thing was about using that quality of reflective quality of water and reflect that light onto the ceiling. And you would get these, moving images. So when a patient's sleeping on the bed, he or she doesn't look at a fan, but look at these movement of reflection of water which falls onto the ceiling. And this water again has this amazing quality which can be absolutely calm at one time and can become extremely turbulent at the other time. Now we are becoming more and more visual. Our most of the video games are visual. We are always attached to the TV screen all the time, whether it is a computer or a TV at home. So even the architectural experience is also becoming more and more visual, because we tend to sort of judge the quality of architecture just by pictures. And what I feel is that's not a correct thing to do, because when you just look at the picture and you frame it and remove it out of the entire context, you really don't know what is happening behind you. You don't know the temperature of the place. You don't know whether it is hot, cool, whether it is noisy, whether it is smelly, or so you are not experiencing a space. You are just an outsider, and that's not a correct way of judging the space. But that's what is happening. Another thing is, in these office spaces, you tend to sort of close all the curtains, have one constant 300 lux light going on, and you really don't know whether there's a cloud passing by outside. There's the quality of light changing, and that's something which I feel is most important thing to experience. You have to be part of the nature to experience that change in the light quality. And look at this picture. I mean, this is Michelangelo's David, and I was talking about the changing light source, and just see that changing of light source, what it does to this picture. I mean, that is the intelligence, and that's the greatness of Michelangelo. Just by changing the source of the light, the entire expression of the face changes. And this is something which I always want to remember every time I design a space, that just by changing the light source, the entire quality of emotion, everything changes. And we are blessed with this possibility of having sun movement from morning to evening, from January to December, and it keeps changing throughout. Every day it is different. And can you really exploit that change of light source to create different moods, different emotions? So you take a cube, you start puncturing it, and you start bringing light within the space, and you try to bring in the right amount of light for the right kind of activity which you are sort of designing it for. But when you bring light in, light is the energy, so you are bringing heat also inside. And that's where the whole idea of sustainability comes in. So you start using solar charts, and you start studying the location of the sun, and how do you bring in the light, but you don't bring in the heat. So you try to reflect the light of some surface too. So you start studying sections, and you try to see that irrespective of the number of floors, irrespective of the depth of the building, you somehow work out some sections in such a way that you try to bring in the kind of light which you're looking at. So we always say that as long as there is a light outside, natural light available outside, you should try your best as an architect to make sure that you don't have to switch on lights as much as possible. So that's the reason you keep working out with these sections. You open it out, you create these wind tunnels, and try all kinds of tricks to do that. And that's great fun. And that's what is, fun doing architecture. So this is one example of NIFT Hyderabad, where we had to deal with this southwest radiation of Hyderabad heat. So we worked with these blank walls towards the southwest and tried to bring reflected light and again air through these gaps. So this is the western side, and it's absolutely blank as you see it, but there are gaps kept in between to allowing reflected light to come in. And then between these gaps, there are skylights which are placed at different levels. So when you look at the section, now this is the western wall, and we are trying to bring light through this into that space, which is the main circulation space. And that's how you sort of tackle the western side. You bring light from the top, illuminate the space, again you illuminate, and then try to create kind of a desired ambience within that space. So see these pockets where you get a focused light, and then you get a relatively lesser light onto this wall. So again, the same space. This is one more library where again we had to face it towards the this is the eastern side. So I'll just show the section where the western sun was brought in through the skylight, and thus the reflected light comes into the library space below. So instead of bringing the direct sun into the space, you try to deflect the light off it and try to bring indirect light. Thus, the heat doesn't come in, but the light comes into the space. Now, one of the professors from JNC had given a talk in our office, and he showed this image to us. And what he said is, this is a night image of the entire globe with a moving camera as the Earth moves. But all the darkest, all the brightest spots are those where the developed countries are, and the darkest spots are there where the undeveloped countries are. But what he says is we tend to waste so much of light. You know, we have uplighters, we keep uplighting trees, buildings, and all, and so much light gets wasted into the space. So he said that over the years, as the countries become, you know, when you know how to really handle the light, how really to control the light, the developed countries would be the darkest spot in the globe, and you know, it will, the whole image will get reversed, which was quite an interesting observation, I thought. So it's not only about sustainability. The light is mathematics also. I mean, you have these solar clocks where you actually you can do certain things with absolutely mathematical precision. And one of the examples is this Abu Simbel temple, which was in the Aswan Dam had to be constructed, and this temple was getting submerged. And this was one of those UNESCO projects which was where every stone was ensured, and the entire temple, it's huge project where the entire project was shifted above and kept above the flood level. Now, what happens in this is on a particular day of a year, this light enters right into the sanctum sanctuary, which is at the end of this entire rock cut cave, and it eliminates the figure which is at the back, which is supposed to be the birth date of Pharaoh, the king. And when this temple was shifted up, one of the conditions was on the same day the light has to enter the inner cell. So when they oriented it exactly the same way. And one of my friends had worked on this project, and then they said when that light came in, there was a huge celebration and they had a party and all. But it's mathematics. I mean, you have to just orient it exactly in the same way and you will get it. And we were trying to do it in one of the temples, what we did, and this is a Sai Baba temple in Bangalore. And on a particular day, we wanted to sort of bring in light, which would actually fall onto the idol, which we worked out the entire thing, but it really didn't happen. But what I'm trying to say is it's very easy to do it, and now with all the softwares, it has become even more easier. So if you see this temple, again, we were trying to see, as against the traditional Shikhara, we were trying to bring in light through this volume. These are some of the images of how the light comes into the space below. Now again about mathematics and the light. I mean, this is one of the installations done by one of the British team, where they have these kind of a crazy perforations which are perforated onto this installation. But the way sun moves on a particular day, it actually completes the entire poem. So this is installed in a school. And when you see it from morning 9 o'clock to evening 3 o'clock, you would be able to read the entire poem. And I thought, which is the amazing thing, because the kids learn how the sun moves, how the light falls onto it, and they learn literature also in the process. This is Virupaksha temple in Hampi, And this is the principle of pinhole camera, where the light gets the image of a shikhara, you see it as an inverted image here. And this is again a pure mathematics or pure science. Now there is a technology also involved when it comes to lighting, and this is about controlling natural light, and this is Arab Institute in Paris by John Nouvel, and this most of you must be knowing about. This is probably one of the first installations where you actually these are cells which are sensitive to the sunlight which falls onto it, and this aperture becomes smaller or bigger depending on the amount of light you want to bring in. So we are getting exposed to now more and more intelligent skins, and as the time progresses, controlling light through natural devices will become more and more easier through this different intelligent skins. But we as architects have to solve the problem through design. I mean, one of the ways is to use these technologies to solve it. But if you can solve it through the design, I think that's probably the right approach. And the second layer would happen using technology, which does need more money. It involves cost. But whenever you solve a problem through common sense, it doesn't need cost. Now, this is one of the houses what we have done in Bangalore, and this is again about using this device to control the light. So what we have is this entire roof has operable levers, and each of these panel can be operated independent of each other, or we can synchronize it. But it's almost like a magic cube, where you can play with the light almost. Whenever you want, you bring in more light. Whenever you want, you bring in lesser light, and there is this space within that. So I call it as a room within room kind of a space. So you have these operable levers. That's how it looks like from outside. But when you come in, you have the entire celebration of light happening, and what I like about it is you can change these moods. Whenever you want, you open it and close it, and when this actually change happens, when you play with this remote control and it changes, it's like fun. I mean, almost you feel like a kid, handling that light. So this whole space keeps changing, and as you see, you can totally black it off also. So you can make it even a completely dark space if required. Now, traditionally, we have been masters in handling this light through jalis, through these screens, and some of the best examples of this modulation of light is South Indian temples, where you go in layer by layer, from one layer to another layer to third layer, till you reach the Garbhagriha, which is actually the smallest and darkest place. So this transition happens in a quite amazing way. You sort of go from out to in layer by layer. First, you remove your shoes, you touch the floor, you sensitize your skin, you go and ring the bells, you sensitize your ears, you light a lamp, you sensitize your eyes, you have Tirtha Prasad, you sensitize your tongue. So all your senses get sensitized as you move from one layer to another layer. And in the process, the light quality changes, the volume changes, the darkness changes. So as the volume becomes denser, the temperature also comes down, the smell changes, the sound changes. You have outside noisy dust and noise. Here it becomes quieter and quieter. You start smelling flowers, and eventually it ends into one dark space, which is symbol of infinity again. So it's quite an amazing transition, and very, very skillfully done, that you don't even know how you move from one space to another. But slowly, all our cities, all our architecture is becoming more and more transparent, and that transition, what I was talking about, is somehow not happening. there is so much of transparency. There's so much of reflection. And what are we reflecting? We are just reflecting some neighboring building. So the ray of light, what we were talking about, that is getting lost. And if we want to preserve that ray of light, you need to have right enclosure. You need to have right darkness along for that for that for the presence of light to happen. Louis Kahn has made this wonderful statement, and he says, "Sun never knew how wonderful it was until it fell on the wall of a building." And for that to happen, you need to have a surface, and you have to celebrate that light by modulating that surface. And that surface can even be smoke, like what we saw in very initial pictures of Banaras. I mean, if you want to really celebrate light, you need a medium to do that. So we try to do that in every project, and we try to bring the natural source of light as close to the wall as possible. If you see some of our earlier buildings, most of these skylights used to be somewhere in the center. And then we quickly realized that it's important to be closer to the wall. So we now, if you see, most of our buildings do that, which is it's almost becoming repetitive in some of our projects. But we think it is important. I mean, if you really want to show that, it has to happen. Now, if you see different climatic zones. If you see in Rajasthan, where the hot, dry zone, you need to create internal courtyards to protect yourself from the heat and dust. So you end up having these blank walls, and those blank walls, with that color and texture, start reflecting light, and your sensitivity towards architecture changes, towards understanding of the light changes. And if you look at Kerala, which is again hot and humid zone, there again there is a different sensitivity, because the roofs come down as close to the ground as possible, and you get a reflected light off the ground into the space. So this is much more soothing, quieter light which comes in, which feels very different compared to what you would see it in Rajasthan. And this is in Trichur, in one of the mutts. But what is interesting is, in that same mutt, there is this roof which comes here. It comes almost about 2 feet or 3 feet above the water, and see the amount of the kind of light which comes in through this small gap, which is probably 2 feet. You have this light falling onto the water and getting reflected, and we are so used to seeing the light coming from the top. So you always expect a shadow of an eyebrow falling onto our shadow of the projected nose coming, falling onto the face. But when you see the light coming from below, the face also looks different. Everything around looks different, and that's a different kind of way of seeing things. Now, if you see Gothic cathedrals, they have a different way of creating that entire ambience of connecting with God. So you have this huge volume, the very subtle light, the reverberation of the sound. So you have this kind of mystic kind of quality with the cruciform, almost like a silhouette, happening. And then there is the Santa Hagia, which is in Istanbul, and Louis Kahn calls it as one of the greatest rooms. It's almost like a cosmos when you go and see that. It's absolutely incredible space. But when Corbusier deals with idea of a church in Ronsham, there's so much talked about it. There's so much people have written so much about the changing light through these openings. But Corbusier talks about this one crack here. He says he lifts this roof by about 4 inches, 100 mm. And he said that crack of light of 100 mm will amaze. So he takes so much pride in just lifting that roof and bringing that small reflected light into the space. And then this is Tadavando's church chapel, which he just takes this cube, makes these 2 cuts, brings light in and probably creates one of the most exciting chapels. This is Louis Barragan's work. I mean, this is quite quite interesting because what he does is you pray in this axis, but he keeps cross in the other direction towards the left side when you are praying, and the shadow of the cross falls onto the end wall, and what you are praying is actually the shadow, which has that kind of a mystic godly quality, and it is much bigger and much more divine quality. So people have used all these great architects have used light to great effect. And then about framing the light, which is again a great idea. And I always get fascinated by this idea of framing the light, which we have tried to do in this building, in this section. As you come in, you go across and you see the light at the end of this entire stretch. And framing the light is the old idea. People have done it over the years. And this is an example of Taj Mahal with a gateway in front. And it's about creating a darkness around the light which is in the light. The skill of the designer is to create the depth of darkness, and how much darkness can you create to sort of emphasize that. And we have tried doing it in many projects where this happens in one of the libraries in IISc. But in this Stepwell in Gujarat, they create series of frames. It's not just one frame. You have light, darkness, and series of frames happening, which gives an additional dimension to the whole space, which again we try to do in some of these projects where you see light, darkness, and then create that entire sequence across. In this project, we tried to exploit that idea of framing it and taken it to the next level, where you come in here, through this frame, you see the entire spine, but you can't enter from here. You have to go across and enter from the other place. You come in here and you start seeing this light, and this is again a research lab, so it's almost like talking about cutting edge technology. So the skylight sort of turns up, hang this, and you have very, very dramatic shadows happening across. And then again, you look back through frame where you came in from, and that's where the entire landscape gets framed through that. Now, looking at studying these sequence of light and shade, this is something which right from so many years we have been trying to sort of understand that entire sequence. How do you bring light in? How do you create darkness? And again, you create the sequence of that. I mean, one of the projects very early during IISc, I had gone to the site when construction was going on, and the shuttering was all in place except one last row. And the light was coming through the shuttering, which looks extremely beautiful. And those days, there was not so much pressure of completing building like what we have now, the time constraint. So I went back and fought with structural designers to give us that skylight, and it happened, and it made a huge difference. And then we started doing it intentionally. So in this building, as you see, you have this wall and you get this light. And then again in this section, you allow the light to fall here, but you create a darkness here. So you make sure that the light doesn't fall onto this space. So in the process, what you are doing is you are creating light, you are creating darkness, you are creating light, you are creating darkness, you are creating light. So there is a play of volume, there is a play of light intensity. And once you understand it, in the next project, you try to do it intentionally, and you keep devising these, which all of us learn over the years how to handle it. I was listening to one of the talks by Rajneesh, and this was about Buddha, and he was using words like a godly man who was an atheist, and he was talking about presence of absence, and those kind of contrasting words. And I thought, how do you really create that in? I'm just wondering, how do you really replicate that in architectural space? that contrasting element. So this was the idea where you have a black cube which has a light all around, and then there is a cube which has light within, and which is kept across the spine as two elements which are countering each other. This happens in one axis, this happens in other axis. So you see through black cube into the yellow cube. So that's the black cube, which is almost like a floating in light against this cube, which has light within. And this is from this black cube we are looking at the other one. So you create that kind of tension. You create that creative tension within the space. This is the same thing again from the yellow cube. We are looking at a black across. There's something about moving lights and moving shadows, and this is something again which fascinates me. That silhouettes, the transparencies, translucencies, the puppet shows, which is again very famous thing in Far East. Now I was watching one of the movies. This was in mid 80s. This was Ketan Mehta's film called Mirch Masala or Garam Masala, Mirch Masala, I think. In that, and this is the first time I could realize the importance of controlling light. This is where, this is not a same image from that, but there was one big gate, and then within that there was one more gate. Sorry. Within that there was one more gate, and this morning sun and this Om Puri comes in. He opens one smaller gate. The light comes in. Then he comes in, closes that gate. The light stops. Then he opens the bigger gate. Again, light comes in. So it's like releasing light and blocking the light, again releasing it. And you always wonder, can you do it in architectural space? This has some incredible quality of handling natural light, and can you really do it in architectural space? And you always keep it at the back of your mind. How do you really try to do it? And then we were doing this Unilever auditorium, and we wanted to feel that moving shadows. As you walk around, you will see that shadows which will keep moving around. So you have these shadows as you sort of walk around. There would be a feeling of movement of it's almost like a musical instrument. So that's the space of the auditorium. Now this is one fun thing. Now when you see this chameleon, and if you see the movement of these eyes, it has a terrific quality. When you see these eyes, the way they move, actually this edge behaves like a rim, and it's a cone which sort of moves in different directions. So if you really analyze it, and this is something which I was watching one of these National Geographics, and saw this, and we thought it has an incredible potential of changing the light source if you just convert this into an object. So we were trying to just design this window which has this conical kind of a thing, and you could actually change the light if it moves around this rim. In the morning, if you want to get a direct morning sunlight, you can do that. If you want to just, in the evening, you want to stop the sunlight from coming in, you can just do it by rotating that. Or you can, exploit it in different ways. So it has a quality of movement, sorry. So this whole facade could actually change as you sort of, so it could become a dynamic facade, which could be a very simple solution. So it's about bringing the light from different heights, different levels. When you have a normal window, which is at your eye level, the kind of light which would come in would be different. The spread will be different. When you bring it from the top, it is different. When you see it like that coming from the ceiling, it has a totally different quality to it. So you learn to handle light. You learn to position the light and sort of try to find how it comes in. And we try to sort of study it. We have a softwares available now. Earlier we used to do it through calculations, but about this rotunda, I mean, as across the year or across the day, how the light would change in plan or in actual thing. We try to make studies of that in different projects, and then you actually experience that. You know, you see these layers, and then the way the light quality changes there. And as I said, you know, when you use this and then you actually see that movement of these shadows happening, the space becomes dynamic. This is one other example where. Yeah. Okay, I will take probably a little more time. So as you come in into this is one of the research labs which is in Bangalore called Origin Discoveries. So what we did is we created a path of discovery which culminates into this rotunda. So as you come in, you keep discovering the space. You don't see what is happening beyond, and then it slowly comes here and it explodes into a larger space, which we wanted to have a wow factor there, kind of. So you come in from there, and this is the western side. You come in, you just see one spot of light here, which is a courtyard, and which becomes a focal point. You come further, and again you want to, so that becomes one focal point. But you always have this different kind of quality of light happening across, and this feeling of light keeps changing throughout the day, and then you come into this larger space, which is actually a learning center. There is auditorium here, lecture halls, dining, and breakout space in the middle. And that's how the space looks like when you look back, and it has that you know, cutting edge research kind of this place is for R&D lab. So we wanted to make it like a cutting edge research place. Now the same space during the night it changes, and the areas which were bringing natural light inside start bringing in artificial light. And we wanted to render the entire space with a similar quality of light and color. So just to give that carved out space. So it feels as if the entire space is carved out of one material, almost like some of these rock cut architecture. We tend to spend a lot of time trying to understand the soffits of the building. So you sort of create a dark spot here, bringing in light. Again, you create what I was explaining earlier, and try to see how light falls onto this, and study these soffits at different levels and the reflected light which falls onto it. Okay. So we are talking about that reflected light which falls onto these soffits, and we tend to spend a lot of time trying to understand that. Again, the same thing what I'm talking about, the flat soffits. We try to fight with all the structure designers to invert the beams and suspend the slabs and things like that, giving us absolutely flat soffits in most of the projects. This is in Trichy Care Campus. Again, the similar ideas. Now this is M.F. Hussein's painting of Mother Teresa, and he uses these blue lines very, very effectively. And this power of these lines is these lines are so powerful. that we always wonder, how do you really capture that kind of thing in architectural space? Can we create those kind of powerful lines in architectural space? So you see one of the examples. This is Hussein's, Gufa, where again Hussein paints these lines on the top and again within the space. But other example is this bath where Peter Zumthor's work, where he uses these small slits. These are hardly about 4 inches wide, about 100 wide. But the kind of a light quality which gets generated within that, and then the water below, which again reflects that light. This is something which is quite amazing. And we were trying to do one kindergarten in Trichy, where we tried to use those slits in the space, and that's the model of that. And we wanted the kids to sort of run through that light, because most of these kids, they get amazed by the ray of light which comes in, and they want to catch it. And here you have this entire sheet of light. So we were imagining kids jumping in and out of that sheet of light, and that would create that the extra fun element into this space. So we created these kind of slits within the space. So handling these filtered light, which had been a mastery of all of our ancestors. And the best thing about these jalis, where it is not like a glass where it doesn't breathe. Now these jalis breathe. You can actually have that transparency or translucency, and then at the same time you will have a breeze coming in as well. But now those things are getting changed with these perforated panels. And this is one of the projects where we use these perforated sheets, and then you try to understand the transparencies and translucencies, and you keep making mock-ups on the side to see the dimensions of the perforations, whether it should be 6 mm or 8 mm or 10 mm, and then through one layer you want to see the other layer, and you want to get an exact right kind of translucency. So that's again, we wanted this line to go through, but at the same time this plane should be formed. So, and then the kind of shadows that you get. This has happened accidentally, but we had not imagined that this kind of shadows will be formed. But sometimes you get pleasant accidents, most of the time you get unpleasant accidents. But that's part of architecture. So this is again part of other dining hall and small bank counter, where we were trying to again modulate light through these slits and having perforated sheets on the top. And this is the last one, where this is in IIM Bangalore, where we recently did an extension to this space. This part is done by Mr. Doshi, and this is probably the most famous pergola colonnade, which every student of architecture knows about. So we had to complement this and create a classroom complex across. So this is that pergola main movement area, and there was a lateral movement in the other direction, the secondary spine. So we oriented some of these classrooms. This is the main pergola area. This is the lateral spine, and then you have these classrooms placed there. The large flight of steps going across, which culminates into one reading hall at the end as a focal point. And then when we were sort of looking at it, we said the dramatic quality of light which this pergola main spine has, we have to complement that. When we started drawing some of these sketches, where we said, can we have different cubes which bring in different light into the space? So some of them became meeting rooms hanging out. Some of them, the cubes were coming from as skylights. So that's the main spine, and this is how the space looks like now. So you have these meeting rooms, you have these cubes. So There's different cubes hanging from the space. This was a western wall, so we wanted that filtered western light to come in, which started happening. So if you go there 3 o'clock onwards, you will see these dots happening, which is fun. And then we were trying to control the light within the classrooms, which I'll just explain quickly. So these are the images. Looking back at the western wall, the main pergola. So when you are talking about a classroom, we want different kind of lighting requirements. When you have normal lecture on, lecture with slides, lecture with AC on, without AC on, so you need different configurations, which we were trying to achieve by sliding 2 sets of these perforated hole screens. And if you move them by just about 200 mm, you can create either total darkness or you can get a filtered light coming in. So you can either have this or you can close it. So you can either get light or you can close it. So just with a very simple, rugged mechanism, we tried to achieve that. And this is how the classroom looks like, which can work without AC, with AC, with projection, without projection. And this is how the screen looks like from outside. So to end the presentation, whether you are doing a house or doing a research lab or a school or a temple, you try to work with light, you try to celebrate light, you try to create different moods. But when you look at the work of masters, whether Doshi or especially Louis Kahn, you always keep that as our idols, and you want to achieve something, and you keep trying over and over again to reach that standard and connect your space with emotions and celebrate light. Thank you very much.